Thank you everybody for joining today's webinar. My name is Nikhil and I'll be the host for today's meeting. So we plan on having webinars like this every single Saturday, so be sure to stay updated. Our goal is to help as many students as possible, so we would appreciate it if you could share our program to your friends. And with that being said, let's get started. Today, we have the privilege of having Mr. Naveen as our speaker. He'll be speaking about his job as an investment banking analyst. He will talk about his work environment, educational experience, and more. Everyone will be given the opportunity to ask him questions. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can click the raise hand button and I'll unmute you, or you can send the message in the chat. Now, Mr. Naveen, can you give us a short introduction of yourself first?
Yeah, you can just call me Naveen. I'm like only a couple of years older than you, but yeah. So I'm Naveen. I'm from Katy, Texas, just a suburb of Houston, kind of similar to, I guess, Plano for you Dallas folks. I went to Texas A&M. I started in 2016. I graduated last December, so not too long ago. And I studied finance there. And I took 6 months off after I graduated in December, and I went and traveled and enjoyed my time a little bit. And I started working around, I think a little over 6 weeks ago now at RBC Capital Markets, which is an investment bank. And I'm working out of the Houston office, specifically focused on energy investment banking.
Thank you for that. So my first question is, what do you do on a daily basis at your job as an investment banking analyst?
Yeah, so investment banking is basically kind of like an advisory position from a banking perspective. So the best way I could describe it to someone that doesn't know what investment banking is basically anytime any company needs any sort of money or advice on managing a large amount of money, they need to go to banks to do that. And basically, the best example is probably just is using maybe companies that both all of us can understand. So let's say like Nike and Adidas, they're competitors, and Nike is looking at how they can maybe get a competitive edge over Adidas, and they are looking to launch a new product line, and they need money to do that. Basically, what they would do is they would go to banks like the one I work at, like RBC Capital Markets or Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, all the big names that you guys have maybe heard, and they would try to get money from them. And the way they would do that is by raising maybe debt or equity. And there's a lot of inner workings behind that. But on a day-to-day basis, for me personally, as an analyst in the group, is basically to make my bosses look as good as they possibly can. And the way I do that is by doing a lot of the grunt work, which involves working a lot in Excel, building PowerPoint presentations for our clients, so that whenever our bosses meet with these clients, we are able to present ourselves in a really good manner, and that the numbers back our analysis. So on a day-to-day, the best way I can describe it is just making my superior look as good as he can or she can by doing my work as good as I can.
So to get to this point, what education or degrees did you need?
Yeah, so I think to break into investment banking, it's definitely like a heavily talked about process. I think investment banking has kind of like a stigma around it as being kind of like more elite or really kind of hard to break in. But honestly, like I think anyone with an undergraduate degree can break into it as long as you're really like diligent and you work hard and know what you're doing. For me personally, like all I have is an undergraduate degree in finance. Like I don't have a master's, I don't have an MBA. I just purely have an undergraduate degree from a state school. So you don't have to go to like a super coveted Ivy League school to break in either. But I mean, that's one way, is just getting an undergraduate degree and just working really hard to break into it. Another way is a lot of people break into investment banking by doing an MBA, like a master's in business administration at like a really top university like UT, Harvard, Wharton, and basically they will be able to recruit just like how you recruit out of college to get a job. They'll recruit out of their MBA to get a job. So those are kind of the two ways I know. But I think regardless, the amount of education you need is at most just a degree from any university.
So what drew you to this field? Was there something that appealed to you?
Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting question. So when I entered college back in 2016, I had no interest in going into finance. I was actually studying to go to law school. When I was in high school, all I did was I did a lot of speech and debate, and my biggest interests were in debate, and kind of like the only career that I saw myself doing was something in legal or law. And the reason I pivoted over to finance was because I actually had an internship my sophomore year summer where I got to kind of see what lawyers at big corporate law firms do. And it's a lot of like contract drafting and a lot of just like legal terms and a lot of heavy research. And I realized that that's not something that I want to do. I want to do something more hands-on with my time. And that's why I pivoted over to finance. And to answer your question of why did I choose investment banking in specific within finance, I think it's just like the career that lets you learn the most in the most like least amount of time, because you're truly like you're working really long hours. You're working really late at night. You're working with people that are really really smart, and you get to interact with CEOs and CFOs of companies at the age of, I mean, for me it's like 21 or 22, which you really don't get to do in many other positions. So that's what kind of drove me to investment banking.
So you mentioned originally that you wanted to pursue law. So what age were you when you decided that you were going to pursue law? Was it in high school, or was there any role models that you wanted to follow?
Um, So I guess from to answer the second part of your question of role models, um, like my parents didn't go to college in the United States. The only role model I really had was my older brother. He's a couple of years older than me, and he is in medical school now. And I knew for a fact that I was not going to go to medical school because I I am not good at science or math or anything in that route. So for me, like I said, like I did debate a lot in high school. The only career that kind of made sense that aligned with that was some sort of law or legal profession. I decided to major in finance just because I knew that finance was a good degree to fall back on in case I didn't get into a good law school, or in case that I changed my mind halfway through. So I think my approach to college or deciding what I wanted to study was focused on what can set me up in the best possible position after 4 years at university, right? So like if you're a pre-med student, you're really interested in going to like medical school, I think it's totally cool if you want to study like biomedical engineering or biomedical sciences, but you also have to remember like, okay, let's say I don't get into medical school, what is like the next best thing that I could do? And for me, like I was like, okay, I could get into law school, but in the case I don't, what is the next best thing? And for me, that was something in finance. And turns out for me, like I liked finance a lot more. So it worked out.
And so there was many majors to choose from. Was it overwhelming when you chose law, or were you kind of sure that that works out with with the debate that you did in high school?
Yeah. So I think like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of majors. For me, it was pretty simple. Like I knew I didn't want to do engineering. I knew I wasn't pre-med. So at that point, there's only kind of two or three main areas you could focus on, which is something in business. You could focus on something that is like kind of in the liberal arts focus, like economics or political science or something, and then maybe like a miscellaneous bucket. And for me, like business kind of made the most sense. And then within business, there's like 8 or 9 majors itself, like accounting, supply chain, information systems, so on and so forth. Finance just made the most sense for me because I knew that I think all of them pay well, like from like a salary perspective, but I think finance was just something that I knew was like somewhat interesting to me. Like I always was interested in numbers and like, figuring out how things like that worked. And for me, like kind of going back to what I do in my day to day, like you get to work with really cool people and you get to like talk to CEOs and CFOs. And I think you can only do that in like a banking type role right out of college at least. So that's why I chose finance. And yeah, it's overwhelming. And I think that's if it wasn't overwhelming, then it would be kind of weird. But I think like for the decision making process, if you can kind of think through it in those stages, then I think you'll be fine.
So with this job, you said you mentioned that you talked to a lot of CEOs and CFOs. So how was your work situation like before COVID-19? Were you working at home, or was it in the office, or what was your situation?
Yeah. So my bank was working in the office until around mid March. And then we all went home for a little bit, and then we started coming back in May. But then Texas saw the spike in cases around, June, July. And since then, everyone's gone back home. So the last 6 weeks I've been working from home. but we've been given the option of going in if we want to. So a lot of the junior team has been going in. So when I mean junior team, I mean just like the analysts, the associates, the people that are straight out of college. All the senior folks, like the directors and the VPs and the managing directors, they're all working from home. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an interesting dichotomy. I think people right now are, you know, it's a very polarizing issue, and I think like people are really kind of just doing what they want to do. So for me, I'm working from home.
Okay. So, um, what do you see yourself working in the future? Do you think you're gonna still have the same job, or do you look to being in a higher role, or what do you think you will do?
Yeah, I think like I think investment banking is great. I don't think it's nearly that sustainable because of the hours that you work. Like I think we work like on a normal day, like our day starts around 8:39 in the morning, and we'll work till around 1:30, 2:30 in the morning the next day. So you're working, 17, 18 hours a day, and it's just really draining. And you can't do that for a super extended period of time unless you'll face burnout. So for me, it's like I'm kind of weighing my options. Like if I'm really, really good at the job and I really enjoy what I'm doing, then I don't see a reason to leave. That being said, like if anything's like detrimental to my health, or if I feel like, I'm like burning out, then I'll definitely pivot to something else. What I think is really cool about investment banking is that it gives you a platform to really pivot to anything that you want to do within finance. I think it's kind of like the cream of the crop. Like you learn the most from a young age. So really like you can be at the age of 25, 26, and you might be looking for another job, and you can really market yourself to any company and any firm because you have such a broad range of experience. To answer specifically, no, I got no clue what I want to do in the future. Like, I'm only 21. Like I literally just graduated college. I have a job, which I'm thankful for, but other than that, it's going to be more of like just like kind of play it by ear. Whatever opportunities come, I might take it. What doesn't, I might not. So it's kind of where I'm at.
So that's pretty cool. So someone asked a question, what is the reason for having long hours? Are there too few people working, or is there another reason? And does all the other investment banking analysts also work long hours?
That's a good question. Yes, to the second part of your question, everyone in investment banking works long hours. It's just kind of what comes with the job. Just like how if you're a resident in your residency program at medical school, you're going to be working 80 to 100-hour weeks. Like it's similar to that. It's not because there's a lack of people working. It's not because there's a shortage of people that can do the job. It's simply the fact that investment banking relies on a really strict and tight timeline. So, for example, the best one I can give is what happened literally yesterday. Yesterday morning, it's a Friday morning, I got an email from one of the directors in our group saying like, hey, we're interested in doing something new with one of our clients, and we want to have this pitch. We want to put together this like presentation for them, and it's going to be at 8 a.m. Monday morning. Well, if it's 8 a.m. Monday morning and he's telling me that Friday morning, that basically means that he's telling me, hey, man, you're going to be working over the weekend, because it's like a 45 page presentation that needs to be spotless, cleanless, perfect by the end of the weekend, and it needs to go to my boss at least 3-4 times so they can review it for comments before we should put it in front of the client. So to answer your question, it's not because there's a shortage of work. It's just that there's strict timelines a lot of times, and you kind of just are looking to get work done as fast as possible so that you can meet your client's needs. It's a client-facing business, and because of that, there's just the pressure that comes to deliver to clients because there's a trillion banks that exist, and they can go to any other one, and we want to make sure that we can, accomplish what they want to do, and we can do that by delivering results as fast as possible.
So there's a lot of work associated with investment banking. Does this cause a lot of stress, or do you think that you enjoy doing it?
Yeah, I think I definitely wouldn't be doing it unless I enjoyed doing it. I wake up every day and like I want to do work. It's something that like excites me. I'm not bored by it by any means. Is this a cause stress? I would say like maybe. I feel like any work sometimes causes stress. I think like on a day to day, no, I'm not stressed out at all. Like when I got the email yesterday saying like, hey, you're probably gonna be working over the weekend. Like I wasn't stressed. I was more kind of sad that I wouldn't get to enjoy my weekend. But that's like, I know what I signed up for, so it's not like I was shocked that he was telling me to do that. But No, I mean, like, I think every job has stress. And I think at times where maybe there's like a really tight timeline, sometimes you'll wake up in the morning and it's 8 a.m. and they'll tell you, hey, we need something by 11 a.m. Like, that's a little stressful because you only have 2, 3 hours to put together a product. But other than that, I mean, I don't think it's any more stressful than any other job. But um, I would caveat that point by saying that it can be stressful if done for like a super prolonged period of time, which is kind of where that burnout might happen, which is what I talked about a little bit earlier.
So what do you think is a long period of time that you
Yeah. So like, I think an example could be like, like, let's go back to the Nike and Adidas example. Let's say Nike's plan to, beat Adidas in the next couple of years is by taking over like Reebok or like some other shoe brand, right? And to do that deal, if Nike wanted to buy Reebok, they would go to a bank to help them to help advise them on the role to put together all the materials, and all the finance and the valuation and all that stuff would be done by investment bankers. That deal could happen. That could take anywhere between 3 months to 2, 3 years. So you could be working on something for, let's say 8 months, 9 months, just every day for 18 hours a day on the weekends for 8 months in a row. Like, we're human, we can't do that without like going a little crazy. I think that's what I mean by like an extended period of time. You're on like a super busy deal, you're on a super busy project, and it just like you get like a bad luck of the draw. But honestly, like, those situations are a double-edged sword. Like, yeah, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, you get to learn so much more than your peers. Like, if you think about it, like, I would compare myself to someone else that studied finance at A&M and isn't doing investment banking. They're just working a normal corporate finance job. Like, they're not going to be working with Nike CFO and CEO. They're not going to be the ones like on calls with super high up individuals, directors, board directors at massive like corporations, and talking with them how much their company values. So yeah, your 8 months suck, but you're learning a lot in the process, and you're going to take away a lot. And I think that's kind of how I view it. At least that's how I rationalize it. Maybe it's not the best way, but yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. So, one of the participants asked another question. They said, what kind of other skills do people need to have besides knowing about finance?
I think people skills is really important. I think that's like a given for any job, but especially in investment banking, because when you're working really long hours, the last thing you want is to hate the person you're working next to. So if it's like 1:32 in the morning, um, like I said, the last thing you want is to not enjoy that person or that person's company. So something that banks really like to focus on is like the culture of their firm. They have like, every bank has a different type of, I guess, culture or work kind of culture. And what I mean by that is that, there's some banks are really hard hitting, like they'll work their bankers to the core, and they'll like really, really, really get a lot of experience. But like I said, they're going to probably face burnout a lot faster. But if you work for a bank that's really nice and they're really like understanding of like your personal time, your time at home, your vacations, that's like a good company culture, and like they respect that. And that's what's really important. So I didn't really answer your question directly, but I think people skills is really important because it'll really help you kind of navigate talking to like peers that you're working with. It'll also help you identify what bank you fit in yourself, right? I think interviewing is a two-way street. Not only are companies interviewing you to see if you're a good fit for them, but I think in banking, you're interviewing the banks to see if that they're a good fit for you. You're going to be spending more time at work than you will be at home or with your loved ones. So it's really important that whoever you do end up working with is someone that's like someone that can accommodate your lifestyle, your personality, who you are. And that's really, really important. So when I was going through recruiting, I got offers from a lot of different banks, but I ended up going with RBC, which isn't necessarily like the biggest name on the street, but I knew that I would really enjoy my time working there because there wasn't a single person in that office to this day that I wouldn't, want to be like locked in an elevator with or something like that. So people skills is really important. Obviously, knowledge of finance is important. I think those are probably like the two big ones, and I can elaborate on it if more.
So yeah, it seems like people skills plays into your job a lot. And that same person asked another question. They said, "What are some of the courses you did in undergraduate, and are they helping you in your current role, or did you have to learn? things new to work at your current role?
Um, yeah, I think it's a good question. I think like I think for most jobs, it's like 98% of what you use or like the knowledge you use is learned on the job. And then the other 2% is from school. But to answer your question more directly, there's one course that I took at A&M. I don't know if other colleges offer it, but if there's like a version of it, I would highly recommend it to anyone that's interested in finance. It's like basically called financial modeling or some sort of modeling type class. Basically, what it is it's usually just an entirely Excel based class. They'll teach you how to build financial models in Excel. They'll teach you how to like value a company. They'll basically teach you how to apply all the finance theory that you learned into like a real world application. So like a lot of the times when you're like studying finance or accounting or whatever it is, you learn a lot, even like in engineering classes, you learn a lot of like theory. You'll learn maybe a lot of like, hypothetical examples of maybe like physics classes or physics courses. They'll give you a lot of hypothetics like, oh, a ball is moving like at this pace or whatever, but you don't get to really like apply that in the real world or understand how it applies at the actual job level until you go and work at a job. I think financial modeling is a pretty good course because you're literally working in Excel, which is what I do like 24/7. So I think that course is really helpful. Everything else, honestly, I feel like it's just like to give you the building blocks to build off of once you get to work. But I think if I was to give one recommendation, it would definitely be any sort of like modeling course or Excel based finance course.
Okay. So if if you could go back in time, is there anything in particular and would you fit never let me rephrase the question. So if you could go back in time and fix a mistake, is there anything you would have done differently?
Um, that's a tough one. I mean, like pretty young, don't have like too many like things to look back on, be sad about. But honestly, yeah, I can't think one off the top of my head. I think like for me, my approach in college was very like systematic. Like I went in freshman year, I had one goal, and that was to like maintain a 4.0. That's like the only thing I did. I just focused on my studies. And then sophomore year, I started focusing a little bit more on outside jobs, and I landed a really good internship, which I worked up in Dallas. And then I knew that was a good job, and then I basically used that to leverage and get an even better job. Well, I'm not going to compare job titles, but what I think is a better job, which is my current job, and I worked that my junior year summer, and the senior year I just got to relax. I had a job like lined up, and I just enjoyed college. Um, I don't really have like too many regrets. Maybe like I do maybe wonder every now and then like what would life have been if I had just I just took the LSAT, I went to law school, and I'm at Harvard Law School or wherever, right? Like I always do think about that, but at the end of the day, like I'm happy where I'm working. I'm happy with the fact that I'm close to my family. I'm still living in Houston. So, I'm grateful for where I am right now. A lot of people were moving factors in that. I don't really have like too many regrets about it. Every now and then I do wonder, but no, nothing that I wish I did differently, at least yet. Yeah.
So so do you have any advice for kids who would want to follow your footsteps and also become an investment banking analyst?
Yeah, like look, honestly, I assume the most of y'all are still in what high school. So honestly, just like enjoy school as much as you can, like learn a lot, work hard, obviously. But like that the time will come like in college when you need to start focusing more on these things. Um, to I guess to if you were to like start doing stuff right now or like after this call, if you could do any action items, maybe just start reading. Like there's not much that you can do really like from like a junior or senior in high school perspective. Just start reading, like educate yourself on what's out there. I think that's more important than actually learning about um, like trying to like learn or take like a modeling course on your own. You're not going to learn much doing that. I think what you would be much more beneficial is like learning like what is investment banking, like what is banking in general, right? Like it's not just investment banking. There's like so many different divisions within banking. There's like core banking, investment banking, credit. Then it's not just banking and finance. There's consulting, there's corporate finance, there's business development. There's so many like different, divisions within just one major. So if you're really interested in finance, or if you're really interested in accounting, or if you're really interested in electrical engineering, learn about everything that you could possibly do within each division And then that way, when you get to college or once you start looking for jobs, you have a really good understanding of what's out there and what you think is going to be most beneficial for you, right? I think the things that you're doing right now, getting people to talk like me to talk and talk about what we're doing is really, really cool because you get to kind of get someone's insight into one of those little divisions or one of those little pockets. But what's going to be most beneficial for someone that's in your shoes or in your seat right now is to just learn about the big picture, right? Like what does finance as a whole offer? And it's those like multiple categories within each category, like within banking, what are the subcategories within those subcategories? What are the subcategories, and so on and so forth. And for me, I feel like I had a really good understanding of what that was when I was in college. Like I knew a lot of what finance could provide, and then I made my decision of going into investment banking based off of all the different options, and I knew like this was the one that was most interesting to me.
Thanks for the advice. So one of the participants asked, um, how did debate help you, and how was the experience, and is there anything they should focus on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. In high school, I think I spent more time in debate than I did my actual classes. So don't follow that advice. Definitely focus on your classes more. But debate was great. I think it was single-handedly the best thing I ever did, just because you learn so much about how to present yourself and so much about how to talk properly and eloquently to people. And that is so important. Like, I mean, kind of it hits on the people skills I talked about earlier. It hits on even the finance things I talked about earlier, because if you're on a call with the CFO and they ask your boss like, hey, like I don't really understand where this number is coming from, your boss is gonna be like, oh, let me ask Naveen because he's the one that worked in the model. And you're gonna have to talk on the phone with the CEO or CFO or whoever, and you have to be able to properly explain to them like where you got your number, what's the rationale behind it, so on and so forth. And if you don't have like good, it doesn't have to be presentation skills, but just like speaking skills, or if you don't have good like ability to like properly present yourself with proper backing, they're not gonna treat you seriously, and they're not gonna like take your word, and they're not gonna stand by you. So I think debate was really, really helpful for making sure that I was ready to speak at an advanced level and also be able to present myself at an advanced level. It's not about sounding smart. It's not about thinking you're cool by like using all these really big words. It's just about like making sense and being able to properly talk about the subject matter.
So it seems like speaking skills is important with any job because you always have to speak about things in almost every job. And my next question is a little different from these past questions. So aside from your job, is there any hobbies that you partake in regularly?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, like I have a life outside of work. Like I don't just work as much as I do say that work is super long hours and 24/7. It isn't like we have lives outside of it. Um, I live with my buddy Brian. We went to college together. I lived with him in college, and now we're living together full time. We play tennis, twice a week. It's like something I do for fun, something we both did in high school. Other than that, like I mean, before COVID, obviously, like we would hang out with our friends. Like a lot of our friends are living in Houston, kind of near us as well, and we would catch up and hang out. We would go to each other's apartments, and obviously now we can't do any of that anymore. But like we do stuff just like normal people do. We hang out with our buddies. Like we're still, honestly, I feel like I'm still a kid sometimes. Like I go home to my parents every weekend, every Saturday or Friday or Saturday. I go home, I eat dinner with them, I spend the night there, and then I come back on Saturday and I hang out with my friends later. And that's like, I think it's really important, right? Like the work-life balance is really critical, regardless of what work you're doing, no matter how many hours you're working. Like you should always, what's more important is your life, your family, the people that are going to be at home when you get back home from work. Your work is just like one of the little segments in your life, but what's more important is the people that are waiting at home for you. So yeah, like my hobbies would be like watching sports, playing sports, hanging out with friends. Yeah, I mean, like I'm just your run of the day average college student, so there's nothing special.
So how was the transition from college to your job now? Because it was pretty recent. So how did you transition?
Yeah, I
Was
mean,
it?
so I started in 2016. So technically, I should have graduated in May of 2020. But I actually accelerated my program a little bit and took some courses in advance. I also had a lot of like AP IB credit coming into college, which I accepted a lot of. So I actually was like ahead in my courses, and that's why I graduated a semester early in December of 2019 instead of May of 2020. So because of that, my job only started in the summer of 2020. So I had 6-7 months off to really do whatever I wanted. I could have started work early, but like I said earlier, there are things that are more important than work. And I knew that I would never get an opportunity like this in my life ever again to really just go and do whatever I wanted. Like I had a job locked in, I had a little bit of money from a signing bonus, and I knew that this is probably the very last time in my life before I retire at least that I could do whatever I wanted. So me and my buddy Brian, the guy I'm living with, we basically started traveling. This is before COVID started, so don't worry, we were safe. But we went to like Asia, we went to Vietnam and Singapore. I went to India and I saw my family. So yeah, I mean, we traveled, we had fun, and then around March, once COVID became really big, we stopped traveling and we just sat at home. And for me, I just sat at home. I spent time with my mom, my dad. They were both working from home. I got to really like develop my relationship with them. I had a lot of fun, and basically that was my last 3 months, like March to June or so. I was just hanging out with my mom, my dad. I went and visited my brother. He lives in San Antonio. And that's what I did. And it was like a really great transition. But for me, it was just kind of preparing myself for the real world. Because once you start working, you don't really stop until you retire. And I was just focusing on just doing everything I wanted to before that happened. Unfortunately, COVID ruined my plans a little bit, but it's okay. I mean, I enjoyed my 6 months off. And that was what my transition looked like. A lot of people I know started immediately after they graduated. They graduated in December and they started working in January, and I could have done that, but I wanted to spend some time and ease myself into it. But yeah.
So when you were choosing a job, so how many jobs did you look at in investment banking, and how many different banks were you interviewed?
Yeah. So I guess to provide the best response to that is, so I had a good job my sophomore year summer, really enjoyed it. I thought it was like really, really cool. And I met some really great people. But once I locked in that job around September, October of my sophomore year in college, and investment banking recruiting is really advanced. So I guess to provide you some background, if you're like recruiting for a normal job, like any job you think like you want to apply for a job, usually in college, the way that works is you apply for jobs in the fall and you usually interview in the fall, and then you'll get the job for the next summer, right? So if it's fall of 2020, right? Like this fall, you're going to recruit, you're going to apply for jobs. And if you get the job, you get an internship for summer of 2021. That seems pretty normal, right? For investment banking, however, it's a little bit different. If you want a job for the next summer, you have to recruit 18 months in advance. So if I wanted a job for summer 2021, I should have recruited for that back in like spring of 2019, if that makes any sense, like almost a year and a half before. So for me, I did my internship at RBC, the company I'm working with right now, in 2019 summer, but I signed the offer from them in like April of 2018. So it was kind of an awkward position because I went and worked at a different bank doing a completely different role. And I couldn't really go back to that bank, even though I really, really liked what I did, because I had already signed another offer doing a completely different job with RBC. So to answer your question, it's kind of awkward. Like I think for the purpose of sophomore year summer, I just looked at one bank and I got the job and it was really great. For the purpose of investment banking recruiting, I like Nikhil, I recruited at every single bank. There was not a single bank that I did not send my resume to or email. I think there was a total of like 15 or 16 different banks. The number of interviews I got out of that was maybe like I had 8 or 7 first round interviews, so around like 50%. And then out of the first round interviews, I got 5 final round interviews. And then I accepted obviously one of those. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I wasn't focused on applying or getting into one specific company. I didn't have like a dream bank or a dream job like that. My focus was working at a bank that I really knew that I would love working at. This kind of goes back to that culture thing I talked about earlier. like, I don't care if Goldman Sachs is probably like the biggest name on the street, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo. These are all huge, huge banks. And I've worked at some of those banks before, and I think they all have great cultures. But for me, like when I was recruiting for investment banking specifically, RBC was the one that stuck out for me. And that's the reason I went with it, because I really enjoyed the people that worked there.
So thanks for sharing that insight. And one of the participants asked a question. Let me read the question. It says, so what AP courses are good to take in high school? And how many of those AP courses did you get credit for? And did you have to take the AP exam for some of them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think AP courses are really valuable. I would I would take as many as you can, honestly. Like you really don't know. To answer your question of how many did I use, that changes every year. Like colleges change, how like what AP courses are worth at their institutions every year. When I got into A&M, the courses that were most useful to me was AP US history for sure. You don't want to take history in college. It's going to be the most boring class ever. So take US history if you can. And then I took like the other courses I accepted were AP psychology, AP human geography, AP world history, AP statistics, AP chemistry, AP biology. The reason I accepted all of these credits were because it got me out of the prerequisites that they require. So no matter what university you go to, A&M, UT, any state school, I can't speak to Ivy Leagues because Ivy Leagues do a whole different type of thing. Most of them don't care about AP exams. They won't let you accept it. But for state schools, your UC Berkeley's, your UCLA's, like your Michigan's, Rice, so on and so forth, those schools, they'll take your AP exams. And what's really important is if you're studying finance, for me, my degree plan still required me to take 12 hours of science courses. And like, yeah, I could have took science courses, or I could just accept my AP credit from chemistry and biology and not have to take them at all. And that's why I was able to graduate a semester early, is because I used a lot of my AP credits to exempt me out of taking courses. I have mixed opinions on it. I think, yeah, it's beneficial, but at the same time, you could just take a really easy science course in college and get a 4.0 and boost your GPA, which is what I did. So like I could have accepted my AP biology credit, but I actually only ended up accepting my AP chemistry, and then the other 6 hours of science courses I need to take, I took like, I kid you not, I took like honeybee science and I got like an A in it because it was a really easy A. The class is super simple and I got a free 4.0, and like who wouldn't want that? Because you get to basically pad your GPA and make it go higher. So I have mixed opinions on it. I think it's good if you can get out of courses that are hard at school. So like history in college is really hard. They make it super hard for no reason. So in that example, yeah, accept your US history credit. You don't want to take it because it's hard here. But if you have a science course and you're not like a science major, then yeah, go find like the easiest science course that your institution provides. For me, that was like honeybee science or like poultry science or whatever. And I just took it and I got like an A, and it was really, really easy. I didn't have to study anything for it. And I got like a free 4.0. Yeah, maybe like you have to spend a little bit more on tuition and you might be like wasting money. But for me, it's like, I think the GPA was worth it. And I think your GPA is important. Do you need to get a 4.0? No. Did I have a 4.0? No. But I think it's still like nice if you can get it as high as you can. So yeah, that's my answer. Yeah, you have to take your AP exams to get the credit for it, to answer that last part. But yeah.
Okay, so thank you for sharing all that advice. That was really helpful. So one more question came in. Let me read it real quick. So someone asked, do you recommend taking courses from community college in the summer of high school?
That's a really good question. Not really. I think most colleges, when you're transferring community college credit, all you get is the credit. You get the credit, but you don't get the GPA from it, if that makes sense. So like, let's say you took Chem 1 at Dallas Community College or Lone Star Community College, and you get an A in it, and you worked really hard over the summer. If you transfer that to UT or A&M, all that's going to show up on your transcript is that you passed Chem 1. It's not going to say that you got an A in Chem 1. It's just that a pass fail. So the only reason I think you should ever take courses in community college is if you want to get ahead for any reason. But honestly, like the college courses are laid out in a way where you shouldn't need to get ahead. Like it's strategically laid out in a smart way, that you shouldn't have to do that. I think it's helpful for catching up. So like let's say you didn't do well in Chem 1 at A&M in your first semester and you failed or whatever and you end up dropping the course. If you want to catch back up, then you can take Chem 1 over the winter, over the summer, and make sure you're back up to normal. But I think it's important to take those courses at the university that you're at, because that way you'll get the GPA for it. So if you get an A in Chem 1 at A&M, I'll get the A as a 4.0. But if I take it at Lone Star and I transfer it, I won't get that 4.0.
So those are all the questions that I had. Is there anything else you would like to talk about that we didn't really cover?
Honestly, like no, I think I already kind of touched on it. In y'all's position, no matter what career you're looking for, whether it's in finance, banking, whatever, engineering, pre-med, lawyer, doctor, whatever, uh, focus on all the opportunities that are out there, right? Like talk to people like me, of course, but do your own due diligence, right? Like go to the universities that you're interested in, right? If it's Harvard, then it's Harvard, great, right? Go to Harvard and see everything that's offered there. If you're interested in like economics, go and see like what have people that have graduated with Harvard economics, what are they doing now? Are they doing banking? Are they doing like policy? Are they working in government? What are they doing, right? I think the best thing you can do is just read up, LinkedIn search, Wikipedia search. Like those are your best friends. I learned a lot of what I know about banking and the banking system literally from Wikipedia. When I'm at work and I don't know what I'm doing, I go to Wikipedia. It's literally your best resource because it's people that are giving you real-time factual information about like what is happening in each role that you're interested in, right? If you don't know the difference between MD and DO schools and you're interested in medical school, like read up on it, right? Like it's just at the core basis, it's just a philosophical difference, right? In how they approach treating patients. So like you can really educate yourself on all these different things, and all you have to do is just like the research is out there, it's at your fingertips. So as a high school student, like join the courses or the clubs that you think will be most beneficial to you. I think debate's great. Like I'm biased, but I think it should be like an absolute prerequisite for everyone, just because you get to learn so much about random topics, but you also get to learn about how to like speak properly. But I think other than that, if you're interested in business, join like FBLA or DECA or whatever things that you guys have at your schools. Or if you're interested in medical school, join HOSA and whatnot, and just like learn as much as you can. But don't like stress out, right? Like you're in high school, you have 4 more years of college to figure out like what you want to do. And the best way you can navigate those 4 years is by making sure you know what's out there. The problem happens in college when you don't know what's out there. If you go to college and you have no clue what's in the world of the business school, and then you go to business school and you're learning about all these things, and then halfway through business school, you're like, oh, actually, I want to do this. That's when there's a problem. Rather, what you want to do is when you're going into business school, you're a freshman, you know of everything that's out there, or at least like the basics of it. And then you can hopefully like build a little bit on those basics and then make a more informed decision later on. But yeah, no, I don't really have any other pieces of advice. I'm not going to claim like I'm super like wise or anything. I'm like, I was just in college just a couple, like less than a year ago. So that would be probably my only advice I have for you guys.
So I have a quick question. Did you also study business or only finance?
So yeah, I studied finance. So finance is in the business school. So like it's just like saying I studied engineering, but like within the engineering school, there's like 10 different engineering like specifications. You do like mechanical, electrical, whatever. So I studied in the Mays Business School, but within that school, there's 8 or 9 different majors. I studied the finance major. So yeah, I'm a finance major, but usually when you're walking around campus and people ask you what you're studying, you'll just be like, oh, I'm in the business school. And then they might ask you like, oh, what are you studying in the business school? You can say finance. That's kind of like the way. That's why I kept kind of alternating between the two. But yeah, my degree is in finance.
Okay. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you so much for all the things you shared today and all the advice you gave, especially about how public speaking helps a lot in your job, and I'm sure it helps in other jobs also. And thank you for all the advice you gave today. It will help a lot of students, and um, I'm really thankful that you were able to speak today. So with that being said, that's all the questions that I had. And thank you everybody who joined today's meeting. So that's all that I had. Thank you so much for speaking today. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yep. Have a good day, guys.